5 months later, whole again, the Franklin has joined Vice Admiral Mark Mitcher's Task Force 58 that spreads 50 miles across the sea. Mission: to destroy the enemy's home airfields and the remnants of his fleet now huddling in the home ports. Big Ben is also serving as flagship for Rear Admiral Ralph Davison. Now it is March 19, 60 miles off Japan. Bombers are brought up from the hangar for a heavy strike that starts launching at 6:53 a.m. Big Ben now has a new skipper, Captain Leslie E. Gehrys. Most of the original crew has been replaced, mainly by boys from New York, Boston, and Philadelphia. High-spirited kids, so devoted to hard cussing that Admiral Davison has circulated a printed command to cease and desist. Captain Gehrys started as an enlisted man himself. Unsparingly, he has drilled his crew to act by the book. For Big Ben, with all her great striking power, is also fearfully vulnerable. An immense steel case bomb in herself, packed with 1,850 tons of explosives, 40,000 gallons of high-octane gasoline. Now at dawn, all is quiet, after a night of air alerts that kept the crew continuously at battle stations. Men have been sent below in batches for the first hot meal in 2 days. Cereal, scrambled eggs, coffee. They relish every last second of relaxation allowed them from the tension of standing at general quarters. 6:58 a.m. Topside keeps a close sky watch as the bombers continue launching. 7:03 a.m. A sister ship suddenly calls, "Enemy plane closing on you from ahead." Captain Gehrys orders a redoubled search, visual and radar. 7:05 a.m. Antenna strained to pierce the cloud bank up ahead. Nothing shows, either to radar or the eye. At 7:07 a.m., still nothing. Suddenly, from 1,000 yards up ahead, the object of the search swoops in. And at 7:08 a.m., two 500-pound bombs landed, firing off the ship's own explosives, raining death on 6 decks downward, 4 decks upward in the island. Big Ben stands in the sea like the flaming mushroom of a nuclear explosion. It seems impossible that flesh, even armor plate, can't survive. The vastness of a carrier is commanded from a tiny roost. Here, on March 19th, Captain Gehrys found himself in charge of a disaster.
Well, we were launching, and I was standing just about right here watching the planes take off, rolling up the deck, when I received a message that the Hancock had a bogey on their screen somewhere forward of us. And I was bending over, speaking into that thing there, when there was a tremendous whoomp and an explosion, and I was knocked to the deck. When I got to my feet, I turned to Commander Eureka, my navigator, who was standing right beside me, and said to him, "What hit us?" And he said, "A bomb. It just went by the flight deck." At that moment, I was looking out ahead again, and a sheet of flame seemed to come out from under the starboard side of the flight deck forward and swept aft along the starboard side of the ship. There was a heavy explosion, and that forward elevator just came right up into the air and then fell back in a cockeyed fashion and then a tremendous column of smoke came pouring out of that forward elevator, and this smoke came right back down and enveloped the whole bridge. Sometime later during the morning, I'm not quite sure of the time, when the worst of the explosion seemed to have subsided, the Admiral came up here on the bridge along with his chief of staff and some other staff officers and asked if I could get a destroyer alongside to take them off. The Admiral saying that he was sorry to leave me under such conditions, but he had to get along with his part in the war. Just before he left, the Admiral said to me that he thought it was about time I abandoned the ship, and his chief of staff said to me, I suggest you abandon over the starboard bow. Well, I didn't think this was any of their damn business, really, because I was in command of the ship. I had no intention to abandon the ship. I'd been brought up in the Navy to believe that a captain's job was to save his ship.
Below decks, as the bombs tore through, there was no way of knowing what was happening. Working in the captain's administrative office on the second deck, 20 feet from the slanting path of the first bomb, was Joe Lafferty, yeoman second class.
When we were relieved from general quarters, I headed for this office. As I walked into the office, I talked to one of the naval correspondents who was writing human interest stories about members of the crew for the consumption of the hometown newspapers. As I looked up at him, a bomb blew up. He disappeared. The flames, like a blowtorch in my face, seared the skin from my face and blew out my ears, and I yelled, "Oh my God, my ears, they're gone." I made my way to the nearest first aid station. It was during this time that as I reminisced about the good crew we had, I also remembered the captain, who was a strict disciplinarian. He wasn't running for any popularity contest. But the crew itself, when they were under fire in a disaster like this, the best came out in them.
Another 3 decks down, far below the waterline, Richard Fulfar, fireman water tender second class, was standing watch in the number 1 forward fire room.
My first thought was that the ammunition that had been prepared above us on the mess deck had exploded. We could hear water swishing around, and we weren't quite sure whether the compartment had been completely flooded. However, the message came to us over the sound-powered communication system that we had been hit. We were asked by the bridge to maintain pressure as long as we could and stay on our stations as long as we could.
Stationed in number 1 forward engine room, where men were dropping from heat and smoke at their posts, was machinist mate third class Franklin Pt2.
This was my watch when we were hit. So I went for my gas mask on the rail back of me here and put it on. And all of a sudden, it was so thick, the smoke down here, you couldn't see anyone that came close to you. Lieutenant was passed down on the deck, and then we secured all our engines here, because it didn't have much steam. We got word above the secure, we did, and one of the officers came down,